adopted him from the Humane Society when he was about 3 or 4 months old. The first time that he actually bit me, wound up in the emergency room with 2 puncture wounds. And after that, I was a little afraid of him for the first time I've had dogs all my life. We lived on a busy street and he was always on guard. So I didn't think anything of it. I just figured that's the way of his nature. Then we moved out here and he's got a lot more room to run around, but he tends to still be on guard. If the mailman comes by, if UPS, if dogs are walking, people are walking down the street, he wants to try to go after them. I have to have the screen door locked because sometimes he's jumped up and hit the door and it's popped open. But he's shocked at first, so that gives me like a split second. You know, and I have to wait for them to leave before I can actually come outside to get, you know, whatever I need. If people are just walking down the street with a dog, or not even with a dog, he goes crazy. Or he tries to bite the window. I've got dog spit all over my window. So it's just, UPS came by one day and I was sitting next to the window and he jumped on me and scratched me and bruised me. So if anybody comes over, we have to lock him up in the bathroom. We put up a 6-foot fence, but if he hears the dogs next door, or if he hears anything, if we have people working out in the street, he will jump up on the fence, and I really think that he could probably clear that 6-foot fence. So having him with the issues that, you know, I've mentioned earlier, it's very stressful. When my husband's home, it's not as stressful, but I'm home with him all day. And he doesn't listen to me as well. So, you know, to sit on the couch and read a book, I can't relax. We've put so much focus on Veto, trying to keep him calm and quiet, that I've let my other 2 dogs kind of slide by, and you know, they will instigate sometimes, or just because he barks or sees something, then they will go. And so the whole day, it's just a barking, chaotic mess. But he's a really sweet dog, and he has a good nature to him. He's just, if we could just get past that aggressive behavior, you know, I can't get bit anymore, and it's just very stressful. We've thought about putting him down, but it's just, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that because I haven't tried everything.
And coming up after the break, that takes Veto to Forest Park.
Wanna go traveling tails? Let's go traveling tails.
When I first met Veto, it was way before considering training with Renee. He came in for boarding, and I went into a play area with him, and he aggressively charged. We started a training program at Traveling Tales, and it got to Renee, which is Veto's owner. It got to her, and she had been having troubles since the very day that she had Veto. She's had him for 7 years, and she kept putting it off because she had not met a trainer that she felt capable of helping her, and she didn't really believe that Veto could be trained.
My first impression when Traveling Tales came in to train, I was very skeptical. I thought, this isn't going to work.
Talked through some of the problems that she was having and finally convinced her that, some of the behavioral training that we offer here could be very vital to changing her life as well as Vito's life.
I was just thinking, he's 7 years old, he is stubborn. It's going to take a miracle to get him trained.
Whenever you think of an aggressive dog, you think a dog, as soon as it sees another dog or another person, it instantly wants to kill that dog.
I knew that he was going to be in with other dogs, and I was really fearful for that because sometimes he gets along, sometimes he doesn't.
I think most times it's through some type of distrust to where they feel the need to defend themselves, and dogs don't talk their way out of things. They either fight or fly away from it. If they can't fly away, then they turn and attack and defend themselves. And it's not because they want to destroy and kill everything. It's because they don't trust or that they're fearful of whatever it is that is approaching them. Day one, when I showed up at Vito's house, he was very territorial, very dominant territorial. He didn't want to let us through the front door. Anytime that I would make eye contact with him, or if I would ask too forward of a question to Renee to where she would get a little bit defensive or upset, it would instantly trigger a reaction to Veto. Chris, one of our owners at Traveling Tales, was also there, and anytime that she turned her shoulders towards Veto, it would also trigger that reaction. To get to know Veto a little bit better, we started to take him on a walk around his neighborhood, and I wanted to see some of the obstacles that Renee had to tackle. And one of the toughest obstacles was a little Chihuahua mix that was off-leash and came up and challenged Veto. And any dog that showed dominance or territorialness towards him, he instantly became defensive of Renee, and to the point of where he became aggressively wanted to defend her. One of the main causes for a lot of his reactions was because there was absolutely no trust in the household. There was frustration. They weren't on the same page. The dog became extremely aggressive towards the dogs next door, even though, they were displaying aggression and territorialness and dominance towards him. They couldn't understand why they couldn't control him and limit his reaction to them. So they really just wanted to quit having to change their lifestyle in order to keep Veto in check. And that's when they called me. The day one, when we first introduced Veto to the daycare group, his first initial reaction was to create space by growling and barking and lunging, as he had learned, through the years of living with Renee. He didn't learn the proper techniques of introducing himself to a dog. He was unsure about other dogs approaching him. When I took him into my house, we went through some of the same things. We had random people knock at my door and come in and knock around the house and walk in the house unannounced, in different situations that at his old house would trigger an aggressive reaction or a dominant territorial reaction. And we weren't getting any of those at my house, which really screamed that he was trying to defend the owner and his pack inside his own home. One of my personal dogs that lives with me at my own home, his name's Opie. He's a pit bull terrier. He instantly bonded with Veto, and him instantly bonded, and they created a very good bond with each other, which really helped kick forward and speed up the rehabilitation of Veto, because Opie is a very confident dog. He trusts people. If you get him out in public, he's very confident in himself. He's not aggressive. He listens. He sticks with owner. When we took Veto, we took him out to Forest Park in St. Louis to kind of get a new atmosphere that he's not used to, new scents, new dogs, new smells, new people, new distractions, and he did very well. We were able to get him, past dogs, past different people, past runners, bikers, all the things that used to trigger bad reactions. The only downfall we had was he became, whenever we came into a very tense situation at a dog-friendly restaurant, a Yorkie challenged him in a very confined area, which still triggered some of his aggressive, he backtracked a little bit, and it kicked him back into his aggressive tendencies. He was still, there to defend us, which, kind of helped change our mind and change our approach to training a little bit, which, you know, ended up being a good thing because it showed us, you know, what we need to continue to work on with him and the situations that he still feels uncomfortable. Before training, I had spoke with Renee about, you know, what type of exercise she gave Veto, what type of, you know, what was his daily routine, and the only exercise that he was getting was in their backyard, which is not big enough, does not have enough mental or physical stimulation for him to get out and become a well-balanced dog. So instantly, whenever he started coming to training, we'd take him on bike rides daily, we'd get him out. He got his physical exercise as well as his mental exercise. He got out, he was learning new things. You know, he was learning how to run again. It was all new things to him, and you could really see the difference after a big bike ride or a run. The relief in him to get out and get back to being a dog that he didn't have for the last couple of years of his life. Renee even admitted that she had not gotten him out for runs because she was so fearful of how he'd react to other dogs and her not being able to control him. Whenever we first started working with him, as soon as he got out of the house, his body posture, he was on guard, he was challenging anything that would approach him. As soon as that distraction would come into his visual sight, he would instantly kick from like a 2 to a 10. You know, and when dogs do that, it's very hard to snap them back out of it and to get them to listen to you. So we ended up introducing Veto to an e-collar, an electronic, a remote training collar, which can be, if properly introduced, can be a great tool in various training situations. The reason why e-collars or remote collars work so well is because they stimulate the dog's mind and break their focus of whatever they're focused in. Veto was a very strong-willed dog, and even with leash corrections or mild corrections that you'd give him whenever he would see a distraction, it was very hard to snap his mind out of it and redirect it towards you. They have a Sure Stim series now, which have a vibration in them, which is basically like a cell phone vibrating in your pocket. Instantly, when that cell phone vibrates in your pocket, it draws your attention towards it. It breaks your mind out of, if you're in a conversation with someone, your mind instantly goes to your pocket. It's kind of the same concept with a dog. We always use the vibration method to stimulate the mind or to break the mind of its focus before we introduce the shock. And that's the most effective way of introducing a remote collar is by giving it that warning before giving a shock, because obviously a shock is a way more negative experience than having a vibration. He would come home and we'd meet with Renee and do scheduled walks in different areas and we'd practice with her, because he was getting to the point of where he was a very well-balanced dog when he was on a leash with me and when he was under control of the people at Traveling Tails. But the key to the training was to empower Renee. The beauty of Traveling Tails is we have a well-balanced group of dogs that we can use in addition to our knowledge of dogs to help train the dogs. We have a lot of times whenever you have a dog with severe training behavioral issues is that they have distrust towards people, and you can use our daycare dogs and our group of dogs back there to regain that trust of the dogs a whole lot quicker than you can traditionally just using people. Because dogs, whether you believe it or not, dogs learn from dogs a whole lot better than they learn from people. And all of our dogs that come on a regular basis trust us and believe in all the daycare employees back there, which makes it a very great atmosphere to rehabilitate dogs in. The proper introduction to a dog, if you have a dog that's acting like a dog, they'll give each other space, they'll kind of walk like a little semicircle around each other, they'll put their heads down, they'll use their nose to figure out if that dog's really a threat. They'll use also body posture a lot, and Veto was not in tune to that at all. Whenever dogs would try to approach him, he couldn't read their body postures, didn't use his nose. The dogs approaching him were using their nose and would give him space. He would see it still as a threat, even though they were in a non-threatening position, and would still try to defend himself. Because of that, the first day that we introduced him for the safety of our daycare dogs, we had to incorporate a muzzle to him, which that kind of limited Veto. He didn't have his weapon of his teeth. He couldn't use his teeth to create space. So it naturally put him in a submissive state of mind, which allowed the dogs to approach him And then in turn, he realized that none of these dogs are a threat to him. They're not here to harm him. And that was really a big step into him changing into the dog that he is today. If your dog's in tune with you, and if you're calm and you're assertive and you're well balanced, your dog trusts and believes in you, your dog will walk right at your side. No matter what passes you, no matter what distraction passes you, your dog will be in tune to you and trust you to handle the situation rather than aggressively trying to chase the distraction away. A good relationship with an owner and a dog is for the owner to make the decision, an owner to be the leader, and for the dog to trust and follow the owner. That's what a well-balanced dog does. They look for the owner in a tense situation. The dog looks for the owner to take control of the situation rather than the dog taking control of the situation. A lot of times, it's the opposite way. The owner feels insecure or threatened, and then they entrust the dog into reacting and defending them and barking and making the distraction go away.
When we would go on walks, and when he gets alert, or when his body posture stiffens or his ears perk up, the old Veto would lunge and start dragging me across the road. Now, the new Veto, I can either tap him to get his attention back to me, use the e-collar, which I hardly ever have to use.
Not only was she working on Veto, she was working on some of the stuff that we shared with Mojo and Maddie, her other dogs, and she actually shared a couple stories.
We usually choose the bike trails to go on a walk, but I also like to go down on Saturdays to the farmer's market because I know there's a lot of people and a lot of dogs, and Veto gets that interaction, and I also kind of get to build up my confidence seeing another dog near him and he's not lunging and growling and dragging me clear across the market.
She was able to take them off leash. She's taking them on almost daily walks. She gets up and walks them in the morning, almost every morning, which is not only good for the dogs, but it's a big life change for her as well. It gets her out, it gets her back to exercise and being confident, which she was lacking some of that whenever I was first introduced to her.
The training has made me more confident and aware with Veto because I can now go on walks. Before, I wouldn't take him for a walk because of the past issues that we had dealt with. So I can now go on a walk with him and myself, nobody else, and I'm confident in doing that.
A couple of times she did it without the power of having the remote collar on her.
And there wasn't anybody out on the trails, so I decided to take them off leash. And so when I did that, I was a little nervous at first, but they both stayed beside me, and we walked, and they would start to get a little ahead of me, and I would call their names, and they would slow down. I never, had to correct them in any sense, and we walked from our point that we had stopped and turned around all the way back, and it was just like, yes, I've got this, and it was so cool. I would have never been able to do that before. But it was just such a confidence thing for me because I was afraid to walk just Veto, and here I was walking two dogs that equaled more than my weight combined, and I had them off leash and I was totally in control, and it was just the greatest feeling.
But she would still, from time to time, as a tool to empower her, she would still use the remote collar just to give her peace of mind, which I told her until she gets full trust of the dog that she needs to use that to keep the confidence that she has control of the dogs. And actually, one of our last follow-ups, I was able to walk off leash with her and Veto through a very distracting area, past the Chihuahua that used to always trigger his very bad behaviors, past the Husky that also used to trigger his very bad behaviors, and he walked right by him without paying attention and without correction of the e-collar. Even with it on, he wasn't paying any attention. We didn't have to give him any corrections. He just paid attention to us verbally as well as physically. If we had stopped, he would stop. With Veto being off leash, a lot of times as soon as you let the dog off leash, it instantly kicks up their energy level. They want to take off, they want to run, it kicks them into play mode. His ear would still be in tune to what we were doing. He'd still be paying attention to us, and if we stopped and a lot of times we wouldn't even have to mention Veto, and he would stop with us as soon as we stopped. He was very in tune with what we were doing rather than being on guard the whole time.
But now, I mean, his energy is totally different. He is, I haven't really seen the aggressiveness in him since he's been back. It's just either he's happy or he's sleeping. He's starting to look healthier, and I think that's contributing to his calmness as well. And our house isn't as chaotic and stressful as it was before he went into the training. Everybody's relaxed. We're not yelling at each other, you know, yelling at the dogs, scooting the dogs here, locking them up there. We can have people in the house. I replaced my blinds. I have real blinds now. He stays out of the window. When we leave, I can put the gate up across the kitchen and he stays in the kitchen. He might bark a couple times, but he stays in the kitchen. He is never in the living room when I come home. And the first few times we did that, I was so scared. So I just knew they were going to be shredded, and you know, I came home and he was in the kitchen. The gate wasn't knocked down and he was just laying there. He's just overall happier. I mean, if Veto wasn't a unique dog as he was, I would have thought Matt switched dogs. Brought me a different dog because he is totally different.
You know, it was a really great moment for the Bradshaws.
Since his training, my household is so much more calm and relaxed. Now everybody is so peaceful. Everybody gets along. We don't hardly ever yell at the dogs or each other because of the dogs. I can just open the back door and let the dogs out. I don't have to go out there with them. I don't have to stress about, is he going to try to jump over the fence? It's just, I enjoy, and actually the whole family now, even my husband, enjoys our dogs. But before, it was very stressful. Now it's so much calmer.
Can I talk about how proud I am of my business? As the owner of this business, it's always been my goal to try to inform our customers of our services. We've added some things that we think will be very beneficial to the day-to-day interaction of the dogs. The addition of the pet turf and the new flooring inside and the scheduled routines that we have with the dogs and the on-site certified trainer. We've added private suites for dogs, for eating purposes, for resting purposes. We are so observant of our dogs and their behaviors, especially with the addition of us adding our 24-hour care, where there is an on-site certified person with the dogs all night long, taking care of them, feeding them, letting them out in groups. Your dog is never alone, never unattended. We always plan on being a step ahead of what our clients want, what they need, and what's best for our four-legged customers and our two-legged customers. We have a 6,000 square foot facility where dogs are rotated around in different areas, brand new building. We're always aware of what we think would be the next step to take to make this. When you board your dog here, you get all kinds of extra. I hope that's the worker. It is. Great. I was on a roll. I really had something good to say. It just came to my head. Removed all. Right now, I would say that there is no other place like this in the St. Louis metro area.